Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to some post-US Grand Prix reaction. How'd you like them apples? That was pretty special, wasn't it? Really enjoyed that Grand Prix. A little bit quiet in the middle, if you want to call it a middle, but it soon picked up and all that action at the end. Great to see as well. Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton back at the front of the Grand Prix for the first time since, well, last year, but doesn't it feel like forever, the way this season's gone for Mercedes? What a fight. What a race. Thrilled with that one. I love this track. I said it on Thursday. It's one of my favourite on the calendar. Flows beautifully. Great for racing. We got a cracker today. I have popped a poll in chat, by the way, asking you guys to vote on, well, to rate the race, really. Great, good, average, or bad. If you're not watching live and you're tuning in later, let me know in the comments. Was it great? Was it good? Was it average? Or was it bad? I think it was very good, at the very least. I don't know if it goes as far as great, but yeah, excellent stuff. Good evening to everybody if you're in the UK and Europe. Wherever you are, hey, morning, afternoon, whatever. It is a late one. We might be a little bit delirious. I'm also, heads up, a little bit full of cold again. I think it's the same cold I've had for 3 weeks. It keeps coming back. So if I suddenly go quiet, as I said to Stuart, I'm either choking to death or I've choked to death. So, you know, rip and all that business. First word, though, of the stream, really. Going to Charles Edward Cheese. Thank you so much, mate, once again, for your incredible support. I hope you enjoyed that one. Your super chat says you did. So, good stuff. Thank you so much, mate. That's so generous of you, once again, and it really does mean a hell of a lot. Let's see if we can get to 500 likes for Charles Edward Cheese. Might be a push tonight, but we'll get as close as we can, and if we don't do it live, then we'll definitely try and get it done post-race. So 500 for Charles Edward Cheese. Thank you so much, mate. Massively appreciated, as always. We're going to try and move through this a little bit more quickly than usual, because I feel like an hour and a half on running through the field and talking about Nicholas Latifi is a little bit too much. Maybe. Good evening, Stuart. And it is evening for a change. I've got that one right. How are you? And more importantly, no offence, how did you enjoy that race?
It was a good one, wasn't it? I thought, yeah, like, as you sort of said in the beginning, it took a little while to come into its own, but then when it did, super interesting, lots of good battles, and my goodness me, there was a time when I thought, could Hamilton actually win this one and keep up the streak? Yeah, I love that. Some disappointments along the way for some old favourites, but yeah, really interested to talk about it with you now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I thought he had it. I thought he got the win when that Red Bull in the pits, that long pit stop. I don't know. It just felt like everything was aligning, didn't it, for a Lewis Hamilton victory? But I mean, that Red Bull this season. I mean, I've got a graphic on screen that will show how many wins they've had. It's bloody ridiculous. So maybe a little bit naive there to believe that the Red Bull wouldn't come back, but I just for a moment I thought he'd done it. But we'll run through the field first. We'll crack on with that one. Like I say, try and get through it fairly quickly. But it was it's not the dominant win that you come to expect from Max Verstappen now, but there was a point in that race, as we've kind of touched on twice already, where it looked like it was going to be fairly comfortable, didn't it? He was starting to pull away at the front, a couple of safety cars pegged him back, but kept pulling away, and it was only really that pit stop that sort of took away that opportunity to effectively dominate the race. He was looking pretty comfortable, wasn't he? And it was, I mean, what was it? Left front was sticky in the pit lane, wouldn't go on, wouldn't come off, whichever. Yeah. And that, maybe I am naive then to think that Hamilton could have won that, because I suppose, because Sky are saying that, and Toto Wolff was saying afterwards that Mercedes were fighting for the win, but if you then add maybe 8 seconds onto that race time at the end, or take it away rather, is Max comfortable, do we think?
We're I'm not quite sure I understood the last part of your question.
So obviously his pit stop was 11.8 seconds. And it was comfortable up to that point. But if we say his stop would have been around 3 seconds, usually a bit quicker Red Bull, 8 seconds off the race time, it's actually a little bit more dominant than it looks, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it's just Max Verstappen in this year's Red Bull, isn't it? And actually that Red Bull was pretty fast around here. Even like Perez had a good run at it from lower down. And look, I am not anti-Max Verstappen. However, when someone starts to get in a dominant place in a season, I do start to think like, oh, if just a little someone gets in his way, or like if it's just someone else having a crack. And Sainz on pole, that was really good to see. But of course, Max Verstappen got him immediately, and I was like, okay, well, here we go. This is going to be a Verstappen walkover. And he actually got in. I said to my friend who I was watching with that he got into a bit of an old kind of Lewis Hamilton mindset. Like he was leading the race really easily, but starting to get a bit paranoid. Like the wind is bothering me, the drivability is bothering me. I think at some point they were cycling through different like modes. Despite having a lot of pace, he never seemed that comfortable. And actually, and again, a lot like Lewis Hamilton in his dominant years, once you put him more on the back foot and he actually had to fight to get the lead back again, then he just got his head down and got on with it. And it was a really impressive performance, despite the actual power combo of him in that car. Really fun watching him take that lead back again. So yeah, I really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting somebody other than Max Verstappen to win. I don't think it's any kind of hate. I completely agree with you. It was the same with when Hamilton was dominating. People wanted anyone but Hamilton to win, didn't they? And when Schumacher was dominating and Vettel, they wanted anybody but them to win, because it's just, that's what we want to see. We want to see competition at the front. But it was just nice as well to see somebody other than Verstappen versus himself, which is how it's felt at times this season. But yeah, just a really good drive from him. It was really the team that kind of messed that up for him with the pit stop. It was 11.1 seconds, by the way, for the pit stop. Sorry, I've read my notes completely wrong. But just generally, what can you say about this season? 13 now equals the record. Now goes ahead of record in the season, 13 wins. Probably going to break that. 3 races to go. I'd be surprised if he doesn't. He's moved ahead of Fernando Alonso as well in the all-time winners list. So pretty successful, and a big moment for Red Bull as well, wrapping up that Constructors title. First since 2013, which didn't surprise me, but it doesn't feel like that long ago, if that makes sense. We know Mercedes have dominated all these years and they've been taking the titles, but it feels, I guess it's an age thing, Stuart, I suppose. 2013 doesn't feel that long ago, I guess is what I'm saying. But I'll ask the question. I ask it every year. Sometimes the question is more ridiculous than normal, and this is definitely a ridiculous time to ask it. But deserving championship for Red Bull this season, based on what we've seen on track. I mean, 656 points already, 3 to go.
Yeah, I mean, they did everything right, didn't they? They've been reasonably reliable, very, very fast, adaptable at different circuits. Max has been able to get on top of this car basically everywhere, which is kind of what you tend to see when people are in their prime and a team and a driver working well together. Whereas, you look at his teammate, Perez, it sort of comes and goes a little bit in terms of performance, but Max has always been there. And Red Bull as well have always basically been there, even when sort of Ferrari have their off days. They've just been the package to beat everywhere and fully deserving in everything they've done. Other kind of administrative controversies aside, you got to be impressed with them, and grab it while you can, because you never know what's going to happen season to season, despite their dominant position. I was thinking, here I go. I said I wasn't going to waffle on again, but I was saying again to my friend, I was saying, Alonso got his first 2 championship wins. And it seemed like we were going to enter into some Alonso era, and we never sort of did again. So you just don't know what's going to happen season to season. So they absolutely grabbed this year with both hands, as they should have, and really, really impressive and breaking records as they do. That's
a great point, actually. Yeah, you never. I mean, it was Seb Vettel said similar after 2013, didn't he? Say, enjoy these moments. We don't know whether they're going to last. And actually, from a team perspective, that has been quite a long time coming now. That's that 5th Constructors Championship, and I have corrected the graphic on screen. Thank you to those who pointed it out. So yeah, I mean, look, like I emphasize the point on track. On track, that pit stop, one of the few mistakes they've made this year, and they still won the race. I mean, they're just unstoppable, aren't they? The combination of Verstappen and Red Bull, it has the potential to be up there with the combination of Ferrari and Schumacher, Hamilton, Mercedes, Vettel, Red Bull. We will see. Like you say, you just never know, do you? But Sergio Perez, his teammate, not actually a bad race for Checo, I don't think, but a bit scruffy early on with that moment with Valtteri Bottas, which caused some damage. Front wing end fence flew off before the stewards could throw any kind of meatball flag to tell him to pit. Where was in the end? He was only 7 tenths behind Charles Leclerc over the line, so another lap, and he's got a great chance of making it a double Red Bull podium. So good comeback for Perez, if you want to call it a comeback from that little bit of damage. But he did start quite far down, 9th place as well. I think we can forgive him that contact on lap 1. It's one of those first lap things, isn't it? And it's nice to see them getting their elbows out, and it's not destroyed his race, which is quite crazy when you think back to, and I'm going to go on one now, but you think back to last season, the tiniest piece of carbon fibre off a front wing, and you're losing 2-3 tenths of a second a lap. Perez loses his whole front wing end fence, and it does next to nothing. I'm sure it's doing something to the car. It's there for a reason, but it just doesn't seem to affect him like the front wing damage used to do, does it? So I suppose maybe not that spectacular to drive around that, but we'll see more from Perez, I'm sure, in the coming days. Maybe he'll say it was horrific to drive the car, but pretty good job to come back to 4th and not far off a podium in the end.
I mean, he had tremendous pace. It was almost as if knocking that bit off made him faster at times. And yeah, like really quite lucky that it actually just fell off his car completely, because we've seen several times, particularly I feel like Magnussen more than anyone, but you've had like when it's sort of hanging off, that's when you got to do extra pit stop, as you said, with the meatball flag. And actually, yeah, really impressive drive from him, to be honest. Not much more to add on that, but yeah, I think started lower down than he intended. Made it back up as far as he could. Some, things have gone different ways. If it hadn't been safety cars and stuff, he might have got a better result overall. But yeah, I think he should be impressed with that. And he's once again sort of just helped add to the team score and help secure that title.
He's doing the job he needs to. I was thinking during the race, actually, that his Verstappen out front looking fairly comfortable versus Perez fighting with Russell, it reminded me of those days of Schumacher disappearing and then a Barrichello, for example, sort of fighting with the other teams around them, trying to make up positions and pick up the points. So he's doing the job he needs to at the minute, Perez. Had a little bit of a lull during the season, but I think he's definitely come back. Just having a look at a couple of comments, actually, on the incident, that first lap, if we're going to call it an incident. Nick says Bottas turned in on Perez, and Free says that was more Bottas not expecting an overtake. I tend to agree with that. I'm not even, it's wheel banging, bit of damage. If we're going to start, I'm not kicking off about wheel banging, but if we are going to start doing that, then let's all go home and watch Watercolour Challenge. It'll be nice and easy that way. But yeah, I've not got much more on Perez. There's not a huge amount in my notes apart from that. Did have a slightly slow stop at 3.8 seconds. Pointed out his damage to front wheel end from that incident with Bottas, and he did gain 6 positions by the end of lap 1 as well. Possibly helped. I haven't seen a replay of him through turn 1, so maybe taking some evasive action and taking advantage of others having to slam the brakes on because of Carlos Sainz might have helped him, but still 6 places is a very good start for Sergio Perez. Lewis Hamilton P2 today, we've kind of already touched on it. Felt like the win was there. Toto Wolff says that they were fighting for the win today. I still think, that slow pit stop has made that maybe more exciting than it would have been, but we will never know. I think my biggest surprise really is kind of back to Verstappen a little bit, is how well those medium tyres held up at that pace, because we saw in that first stint the medium tyres were starting to fall away. But then they've stuck them on. I know the cars are lighter with fuel and things, but they've stuck them on, and he's gone flat out the pits, absolutely leathering that car to try and get it back to the front, and they've held on really well. I thought Verstappen would get close, but then Hamilton's tyres, with them being the hard, or maybe last a little bit longer, would keep the grip. But quite impressive, actually, that when you think about it. I mean, 20 laps on a set of tyres doesn't sound like a lot, does it? But we've seen quite high degradation this weekend. But I can't fault Lewis today at all, and I don't want to fault him. I don't want to fault anybody if I can avoid it. But just a superb drive, and I think he'll be happy looking back with P2. But he hasn't won a race yet this year, and it's going to feel, isn't it, inevitably like it's one that got away a little bit. I mean, he couldn't have done much more to defend. It's just, I guess that's my question to you then, Stuart. Is it just, if you've got a Red Bull coming at you, you're just not stopping it, whatever you're driving, unless you're in another Red Bull?
I mean, and part of the thing is that Red Bull is so fast in a straight line, which I find fascinating in itself, because that wasn't what Red Bulls were like before this year, and now it's just a rocket in a straight line. So even without DRS, Lewis was going to be vulnerable. But I was, up to the point where Verstappen got in the DRS zone, there was that question mark of like, would he get there quickly enough before the medium tires went off and weren't able to attack as hard? And I thought once he overtook, he would be off into the distance, because the lap times he was doing were pretty phenomenal compared to what Lewis was able to achieve on those hards. And I was more surprised that Lewis stayed with him for a few laps and sort of looked like he was pressuring him, wasn't he? And as we saw, what kind of looked like was happening was he was pressuring Verstappen enough to the point where Verstappen was going off track a few times. And I think all Lewis had left in his arsenal was to just keep the pressure on and hope he would make a mistake one way or another, even if it was just to get an off-track penalty of 5 seconds. Ultimately, Verstappen disappeared by 200ths more than 5 seconds anyway by the end, which would have been fascinating if he had got a penalty. But yeah, you can't really fault Hamilton here. He had a hell of a race. I think he'll know, in terms of ones that got away, that he had a couple of things thrown his way this race. He had a couple of safety car things. He had Verstappen having that slow pit stop, and he knows the car's not quite there yet. But again, this is the kind of, like, you need one race where luck goes his way just enough to get the win. And I think Mercedes, and particularly Hamilton now at this point in the series, are ready to take that should it come that way, as we saw today.
I think what today has done is it's whet my appetite a little bit for next year, because they've bought this update this weekend, Mercedes. Not all of it's on the car, of course, as we know, but they've bought the update this weekend, and they seem closer. I'm not going to say they are back in the hunt for championships, because they were still a decent way off yesterday in qualifying, but in race pace, we've seen it at times this season anyway, they seem to be a little bit closer. And with the winter to kind of continue to develop, I think Toto again pointed out it post-race, they've got a bit more CFD time than Red Bull have next year, so that could help them out. So they could bring themselves back into play next year for wins. As we sit here now, having watched Red Bull domination this year, it's hard to see somebody turning it around next year to win the championship and stop them. But I do kind of feel like if anybody's going to, it's going to be Mercedes. Nothing against Ferrari, but I also feel like if anyone's going to throw a championship away, it's going to be Ferrari. So We shall see. But I think I'm quite excited for next season. I think we have to be excited for next season because this one is basically done. But yeah, great drive from Lewis Hamilton. We'll just point out as well, brake issue on the grid. So I don't know how confident he was on those brakes going into turn one. I suppose he's been at the team long enough to know that and trust them that they're going to get it right. But there might have been some nerves heading up there for the first time at full speed. But just a great drive and kind of disappointed for him because you know I like my stats, Stuart. You know I like my records. It would have been cool to see him keep that record going of winning in every season of his career. Obviously, 3 more races to do it, but. That could be one we look back on and go, that was maybe the moment. But again, Red Bull's so strong. George Russell, by the way, fastest lap of the race, which is probably the best bit of his day. Turn one. Oh, Rust. I feel like every time there's a turn one incident in the front, it seems to be George is involved somewhere, doesn't it? George, that sounds really bad. It's happened like 3 times, but you know what I mean. George Russell hit Carlos Sainz at the start, was locked up into turn one, sent the Ferrari into a spin. It ended Carlos's race, didn't it? Damage to the radiator. We'll get to that in a moment, which caused a water leak. 5-second penalty for George Russell. I don't think many are arguing with it. Let me know what you're saying in chat. I think there is. We often say it on these streams, don't we, Stuart? First lap incident, maybe you can let that go, but he's got in hot. He's got it wrong, made the contact, sent Sainz to spin, ended Sainz's race, and actually compromised other drivers behind as well by causing that spin. So I think Martin Brundle felt like 5 seconds might have been a bit light. I personally feel like 5 seconds was fair, and perhaps the stewards maybe thought, well, it's the first lap, we'll cut him some slack a little bit, just a tiny bit of slack. A bit of dodgy move.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely deserved a penalty, but I will, to give a light defense of George Russell, I think he was surprised because Sainz had to sort of cut in a little bit. He sort of cut in more than I think Russell was, not in a dangerous way, but I think because he was like moving to the left of Verstappen, I think just Russell was a little bit caught out. But again, he should have been more aware of what was going on the track and not positioned himself perhaps so aggressively. So yeah, made an error, and I felt so bad for Sainz. Honestly, just the guy doesn't have the best of luck. He was on pole position, sure, he lost pole position, but then the whole race just like went away on that one. So shame for Russell, and then spent a lot of the race kind of lower than he should have been, I think, probably considering what Hamilton was doing. He spent a lot of time fighting with Aston Martins for a bit. I don't know, it just seemed like he was a very number 2 driver kind of race today, don't you think?
Yeah, across the weekend he didn't quite have the pace that Hamilton had, did he? So maybe that's a fair comment, and I think it gave us some entertainment, didn't it, watching him race back and fight back. But that's that good. It's a good point on Carlos Sainz. It's in my notes that he does come across, but it's. I know you're not defending Russell, by the way, but it's not like Sainz has come all the way across the track. If Sainz does something more dangerous than that, then Russell shouldn't be getting a penalty, but he's locked up as well. I do feel like a first corner incident, and you could have let it go, but it compromised a lot of people's race and destroyed Sainz's, and yeah.
It's a very wide track. It's not like he didn't have anywhere to go.
It's one of those as well, isn't it? That I'm going to sound like I'm talking about football now. I've seen them given and I've seen them not given. So could have gone either way, I suppose. And that actually brings me to a point I've got Hamilton actually really quick thinking in turn one to just go, do you know what? I'm heading into the runoff. I'm not doing this. I can see you, George, because that could have been messy for Mercedes and Ferrari together. Couple of things in chat. I did see somebody mention about Carlos Sainz cutting across. George said they were going bowling before the race. It's like he could see the future, says Henry. Lovely. I can't believe Carlos would just cut across like that, says Zach. So Zach feels like he shouldn't be cutting across there. Who said crikey? Yeah. Is it Fritzy? Says Russell is a goldmine for DTS. Crikey. I love the word crikey. And Red Raven says he's with me on this one. Thank you, Red Raven. Actually, Red Raven, could you pop back to the comment section on last week's stream? I've replied to your comment. I don't know what you were talking about. I completely forgot what the conversation was you're referring to on the Twitter thing. So if you could just reply to my comment on there so I don't lose my mind. Because bizarrely, and I don't usually let comments get in my head and bug me for a week, but it has been bugging me for a week. I don't know why. I feel like I've said something I shouldn't, so please do, mate. That'd be massively appreciated. Space says 5 seconds at the start of the race, leaving a whole race to recover. That's not usually really a penalty, so much as a token ruling to appear as though a penalty has been administered, says Space. Good comeback, though, from George to be P5 in the end. Like I say, got the fastest lap as well, so points on the board. Probably where he's in the championship, just very quickly on Russell before we get to Ferrari. Where is he? 218 points. He got a shot here, 16 clear of George Russell, still clear of his teammate as well. So he's got a chance, 20 points clear of his teammate, of finishing ahead of Lewis Hamilton, which would be a hell of an achievement for his first season. But I think that brief flirt he had with P2 in the championship is gone. I think realistically for George. But yeah, Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, he was P3 today from, where was he? 12th on the grid. Now, for Leclerc, I didn't think he was going to get a podium today because he started really, really well, made up some really nice places off the line, was up to P9 by the end of lap 2, started to come through the field, but then it kind of slowed down a little bit, didn't he? And I thought, it's going to be a bit much for Charles to come back to a podium here. Looked in a little bit with the safety car. I'm not going to use my usual line, but looked in with the safety car, got himself a cheap pit stop. Shortly after he said he was considering Plan E, which made me chuckle. If Charles was on Plan E, what were Ferrari on? Christ. So got lucky there, I guess, but good comeback. Fabulous fight with Max Verstappen. I just used the word fabulous on stream. I don't think I've done that before. There you go. Fabulous fight with Max Verstappen to kind of try and hang on to P2 as it was at the time. And also, absolutely lovely move on Sergio Perez into turn 11 so late. Second attempt as well, wasn't it? Because he tried it the lap before and got it wrong, but very late on the brakes. I didn't think he was going to get slowed down. He did. No contact. Really nice move. I actually think, there is an argument for lucky because of the safety car, but I still think that's a fabulous drive from Charles Leclerc, apparently.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that at all. And I loved that move. I really thought that move was going to go badly wrong for him. And no, just perfectly positioned. Didn't have to shove anyone, didn't run off the road, didn't shoot off the road himself. Really loved the move from him. And I think a well-deserved podium finish. Could have been a little bit higher if things had gone slightly differently. But yeah, I don't think, he couldn't have beaten Max Verstappen, but still. Interesting that he sort of dropped off from Max after after a few laps in the final phase. But yeah, a great move from him. I think shame he had to start so far down. This was an interesting race because actually there were people who were shuffled down the order. And then once I think we had the first safety car for Bottas, it kind of shoved all the top cars into the top 5, apart from Sainz, of course. And suddenly that's when the race started coming alive because they all started fighting with each other. Whereas normally, conventional wisdom would be like, if you shove all the top teams out of order, then they'll have to fight through, and that'll be really interesting. But actually, it was once you put them in the right place, once everyone was fighting the people they were supposed to be fighting, it became interesting, which I thought was a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think there was a moment in that race. Is what I'm trying to think what I want to say, but there's a moment in that race after that move that you've talked about. Verstappen's getting through and Leclerc sticking with him. I thought that could be the key to Hamilton's win. I thought Leclerc was going to come back and make the move, and then Verstappen would have to fight it back, and they cost each other too much time. Because I think, was it Leclerc that had already been over the radio? Well, it would have been, wouldn't it? Sainz was long gone at that point, but Leclerc had come over the radio and said they're so fast on the straights. So maybe there wasn't going to be a way back for Charles Leclerc from there. But I still think, yes, again, I'll say it for a fourth time for anybody that misses it later. Absolutely looked in with the safety car, but still, it's a great comeback drive, and it's a podium from what wasn't looking like a podium at one stage in the race. So good stuff. We've talked about Sainz. I will just say, great lap in qualifying yesterday. It's all I can say, really. We've talked about the incident. We're all kind of seem to be in agreement that, yes, Sainz does come across, but Russell has got to take the pain for that one. I just feel for him. Car in the side of him, broken radiator, causes a water leak, game over, and he's done nothing wrong. I suppose the only criticism was his start. A lot of wheel spin off the line, which I mean, Max Verstappen just breezed past, didn't he, on the run to turn 1? But still, I mean, just doesn't seem to get any look at the moment, Carlos, does he? I'm just trying to let's have a look at his results so far, just very quickly. 2 DNFs on the bounce, obviously that crash in Japan, podium in Singapore, 4th in Italy, 8th in at Zandvoort in the Netherlands, 3rd in Belgium, then a couple of points finishes in Hungary and France, and retirement in Austria. It's been a very up and down season, hasn't it? Sometimes of his own making, sometimes because of Ferrari reliability, but today, just gutted for him. But great lap in qualifying. It's something, isn't it? I've got to give him credit for that one, but we'll roll on. The pictures won't keep up with us today, I'm afraid, because as I said at the start of the stream, really do want to get through this order. I'm getting, I think, 90 minutes is a bit much on this, because we'd like to just waffle on a bit, don't we, Stuart? We get through the order and we can talk about the weekend and the race as a whole, and get your comments as well on the subject of comments. Super chats. Thank you to Johnny White. Says Supermax. Thank you very much for your super chat. And I don't think I read Charles Edward Cheese's chat out, so I will read it. It says, wait, the bear never drinks. Terrible news. Awesome race. Sheesh, poor science dog. That's me. That's my pronunciation. I'm not doing it. That dude has no look bags. So that's kind of good timing there. No look at all, has he? So thank you very much, Charles. Thank you to Elijah as well, who says Mercedes looking a little closer with these new upgrades. With both championships done and dusted, can Hamilton win a race in Brazil or Abu Dhabi maybe? Thank you very much, mate. I'll try and remember that. We'll come back and answer that a little bit later. Thank you for your super chat. Always appreciated. Anything you want to add on the top 3 teams, Stuart, before I rock on to the midfield, and we'll go through this super quickly?
Nope, I think we covered it. Very excited to go on the midfield, who had a hell of a adventure today.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any questions on the race, we can answer them later if we've missed anything, so don't worry about that one. So Lando Norris, P6 for Lando Norris today. Really good race, actually, particularly late on. Very racy, wasn't he? Sort of was struggling a little bit. Went down, I guess, through the field, seemed to be struggling with the pace of Gasly. Was in that little fight with him early on. I don't know where the pace came from later on. Was there a late pit stop I've missed? It's not in my notes. So one of several cars caught out by Sainz's spin at turn 1. That cost him time. Pitted end of lap 14, 2.4 second stop. Picked up debris, so did have damage to the car, which could have cost him pace. Oh, yeah. The word I've used to describe his move on Yuki Tsunoda at turn 1 is, are you ready for something from the 90s here? Lush. There you go. It's in my notes. Nice move as well on the outside of Albon at turn 1, but it was just late on. He seemed really racy. I don't know if he'd been on some fresher tyre, Stuart, or something that gave him that extra pace, or maybe if they managed to get the debris out in a pit stop, which gave him that extra pace.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not, because I'm bad. I'm not entirely sure, because we sort of had glancing looks at Lando Norris, but I wasn't following exactly what his strategy was or what he was doing. I felt like
stop. Lap 34, sorry. No.
There you go. Yeah, in terms of TV direction, we weren't like following the Lando Norris story. In fact, we missed his overtake on Alonso, which I don't think I've still seen in a replay of, if one's available, but in the last few laps.
Yeah. We saw a few, didn't we? A few nice overtakes, like I say, the Lush one on Tsunoda. But quite important points for McLaren today as well, I feel. I know that Alonso scored, but they have outscored Alpine. It's kept that battle interesting. Might still be a bit much for McLaren. There's not that much in it. You never know. But I just think a really great race from Norris today. Again, particularly late on. Good stuff. And to drive around that damage as well. I've just seen Nick actually say, was it Nick? Yes, says Norris ran over pretty much all the debris of the Alonso Stroll incident. Can't believe he had no puncture. I can't believe we didn't get any punctures from that, actually, to be honest. That was quite a moment. We'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, fabulous drive. That's the word of the day from Lando Norris. Daniel Ricciardo, though, down in 16th. I have slow first pit stop at 4.0 seconds. I've got next to nothing on Danny Rick. I know TV direction, when you've got... TV direction isn't always great anyway, but when you've got a fight at the front between, Verstappen, Hamilton, Verstappen, Leclerc, Verstappen and Verstappen, they're going to focus on that quite a bit. So I feel like we missed quite a lot of action in there, but I'm also not really recalling looking at the timing tower and thinking, oh, Ricciardo's got a great shot at something. Very quiet day for him. What I will say on Ricciardo is I saw a lot of people yesterday saying that, Ricciardo, the surprise of Q1 getting knocked out. And I thought, is that a surprise? Daniel Ricciardo getting knocked out in Q1 anymore? 10 races to go maybe, but kind of feels like the norm almost at the moment. I'm not going to go at the poor guy, but I'm surprised by people's surprise that he was knocked out in Q1.
Yeah, I mean, it's he's been flirting with that end of qualifying fairly regularly. I think the surprise would be him going into Q3 more, I think, depending on what. I just feel bad. I do feel sad for him. And and he's one of those drivers now that just TV direction's not really looking at anymore because he's just sort of not in things for the most part. And I'm just, it's kind of getting sad watching the end of this season. I hope he gets another chance in a team where he gels with the car or whatever's missing from him this year. Because and then he gets his Vavavoom back or whatever he needs. Lots of rumors about what he's doing next year, but I don't know. But yeah, great race for Norris. And you're right, this McLaren Alpine battle is getting very tasty in these last few races, and I think that could go all the way to the end. I don't know which way that's going. McLaren finding something recently just when they needed to, as Aston Martin did as well. I'm sure we'll get to soon.
Yeah, I think a lot of people love the battles in the Drivers' Championship, but for me, that Alpine McLaren one is much more exciting than who's going to finish second out of Leclerc and Perez, honestly. Because I think it's because there's money on the line, isn't there, as well? So it means something. Leclerc v Perez for P2 is just a pride thing, I guess, more than anything, whereas the McLaren one actually means something. So I'm quite looking forward to that fight for the rest of the season. If nothing else, watch that. If you're fed up of the dominance at the front or whatever, watch that battle. Or we hope, as I said on Thursday, with gloves off with the championships decided, maybe we'll get a few more like this. It would be very, very exciting. Fernando Alonso, P7 somehow. I have no idea how Fernando Alonso is P7, given that at one point he was taking off like a plane down the back straight. Absolutely unbelievable. So I assume most of you who are here have watched the race. If you haven't, Fernando Alonso hit the back of Lance Stroll after Stroll made what I think is a very late jink to the left. Contact, went airborne, landed, and you just assume, well, that's his race over. No, I think he hit the wall as well. Got it back to the pits, reminiscent of Baku in the McLaren a few years ago, dragging the car around to the pit lane. They stuck on some new wheels and a front wing, and off he went and somehow finished P7. I mean, I don't think there are many drivers on the grid that could do that, quite frankly, Stuart. I'm sure lots of fans of Hamilton and Verstappen will maybe argue otherwise, but that's the second time off the top of my head that he's done something as crazy as that. I mean, what a drive to take P7. I mean, come on. I kind of always feel like that's worthy of driver of the day.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to say. I mean, we saw him flying through the air. And as I said on Twitter, I was like, I'm amazed his spine is still suitable for racing, let alone his car. Dragged it P6 at one point. Like Norris, as I said, Norris did grab him to overtake him again in the last couple of laps. So, my goodness me. What a drive from him. And that's, people have varying opinions on Alonso about different things, but he is a heroic driver. He's not someone to give up, and he will drag anything around. Really, really impressed with that. And to be honest, if he hadn't had a crash with Lance Stroll, I'm not sure how much further up he would have been, to be honest. 6th or 7th was probably what he was on for anyway. So amazing. What else can you say about the guy?
Well, if he'd not had the accident with Stroll and not got past him, he would have been worse off, wouldn't he? Because Stroll was running really well. So actually, the crash helped him out.
Yeah, got Stroll out of the way.
Only Alonso could take off in a Formula One car and actually benefit from it. I've got my notes. Pitted under safety car. Then it's the incident with Stroll. Pretty big accident, to be honest. But I can't, like I say, that Baku moment in the McLaren, it just reminds me of that coming back through. Coming around the track, dragging it around on 3 wheels. I'll tell you what, are you surprised there wasn't a red flag? Because when I saw that, I said to myself, obviously, because I watched them on my own because I'm a loser, but I just said to myself, that's a red flag. And Martin Brundle said it looked like a lot of debris, but apparently Seb Vettel came past it, and possibly others as well, and said, there's not a lot of debris there, it's fine. I'm quite surprised that wasn't red flags, or even that we didn't have a longer safety car. I actually booted the PC up to start working on the stream because I assumed we'd be under safety car for a while, but we weren't. I guess great work from the Masters, is what I'm saying.
It was actually a really good turnaround generally, and we had a couple of safety cars, and they're both, I think, pretty tightly run, and also just on a note on that, I mean, glad to see that they're now formally telling drivers when there's
Yes.
things on track, like vehicles they need to avoid. Obviously, they're watching my videos, and they're taking that on board as
Who
usual.
isn't? They should do.
But yeah, and it seemed to be handled safely as well. Following the Alonso Stroll crash, because there were a lot of people on track, but they all seemed to move out of the way when the train came by, and then they just came back onto track again. So I think that was all above board. So yeah, really good job getting that done. I assumed it was going to be a red flag when we got that first shot of all the debris, but we got through it pretty quickly, which is good because it meant we got to do things like start this stream on time and not dig into anyone else's sleep.
Red Raver says, of course there wasn't much debris left. Norris went through it like a magnet, which is fair enough. So he picked up most of it, didn't he? I did see a couple of comments I just want to read out as well. Greg says, would love to know what damage had occurred to Alonso's car. I've got to have a look for the Alpine press release when we've gone through the order and see if I can find anything, because that would be interesting, because there's got to have been some damage, surely. Unless he's just got lucky with the way everything landed for him. I don't know. Thank you as well again to Elijah for your second super chat. Thank you very much. It says Danny was last throughout a good portion of the race. He was, yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, yes. Good shout. And I did see somebody else as well mentioned that Daniel wanted... is it Pom? Says Daniel wanted to pit under the safety car, but McLaren didn't let him. So maybe that's an issue there. And pointing out there, cited Canvas, he lost his mirror, did Fernando Alonso, which... Oh, I'm going to really nitpick now. Kevin Magnussen, black and white or black and orange flag, the meatball flag for his unsafe wing flapping around. We've seen a few times this season. Do you think we need a black and orange flag for somebody's mirror hanging off like that? It's still debris, isn't it? But would that be harsh?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I don't. Do you know how long it was behaving like that? Because from what I saw, which, I can forget things really easily, it sort of was flapping about and then it fell off pretty quickly. So I don't know how, once it's off,
I feel like
how quickly you can meatball flag someone.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming there was damage from his accident, but I don't know if it took like a few laps before it, the structural integrity got to the point where it was actually hanging off. So maybe there just wasn't enough time to deal with that. Maybe they just didn't see it, because we only got it on TV, I think, at the sort of last minute. So, yeah, I mean, I would generally agree, if you're going to get someone for bits of bodywork dangling off, you get everyone for bits of bodywork dangling off. But yeah, I think it might have just been that there wasn't enough time to have to deal with it.
I feel like I'd seen replays of it flapping around before, a few laps before. So whether they just hadn't noticed it. I mean, it's very easy to spot a front wing end fence flapping around, isn't it? And maybe not quite so easy without looking at every onboard to see mirrors flapping around. But as somebody just said in chat there, a dangerous piece is a dangerous piece. From Miguel says a dangerous piece is a dangerous piece, isn't it? So, yeah, I mean, I think the K-Mag ones are harsh anyway. But I totally get what you're saying, Stuart, because it's kind of what happened with Perez, wasn't it? That was flapping, but it came off before the stewards could really do anything about it. So it was too late at that point, which is odd. But hey, I'm not going to start saying Alonso should get penalties for a wing mirror falling off or anything stupid like that. Great drive, though.
But consistency's good.
Yeah. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? Just going to see if the FIA know what the word means. Esteban Ocon, a bit of an odd race for him, I would say. P11 in the end from the pit lane, so good comeback drive from the pits. But what we did see of him, he was quite racy and nice and aggressive. A couple of lockups. I think I saw one at turn 10. Could be onto that. Is it turn 10 or 11? Could be onto the long straight. Whichever one it is, the hairpin as you come to the long straight. Going a bit deep in there at least once, maybe twice. So nice and racy and aggressive as always. But I don't remember seeing an awful lot of him. Up to P10 by lap 16. Pitted under the safety car to put on some hard tyres. Started on the hards as well. So obviously had to make another stop to put another compound on. But I don't think that's a terrible race from Ocon. From the pit lane to P11. Yes, we got 3 retirements, but I don't think that's bad from Esteban at all today. It'll be disappointing to get points. 1.9 off Sonoda in the end, but not bad. He'll be disappointed because his teammate flew and finished 7th. He didn't fly and finished 11th, but again, I feel like that's just an Alonso thing, isn't it? But the key thing for Alpine is they scored some points to keep the fight, to minimise the damage with Norris finishing 6th, I suppose, because there would have been, again, back to Alonso, there would have been a moment in that race where Otmar Safnauer and co kind of went, oh no, we're in trouble here. So probably a bit of relief, I guess. Anything you want to add on Ocon's race? Anybody in chat or Stuart? Anything you've seen that I've missed that was spectacular or lush?
I mean, the only thing I would add, yeah, I mean, if you comparing him with the pace of Alonso, especially given what Alonso went through, and also comparing him with, Vettel, who was punted out of the points through no fault of his own in a bad pit stop, which would be a nice segue because I think we're going on to Aston Martin next anyway, and still managed to get back in the points. I think Ocon will be disappointed that he didn't get further. He had a couple of safety car periods to kind of, bunch him back up to the fight. So I think things didn't quite go the way he would have wanted. But yeah, Alpine got some points for Alonso, but the way this constructors battle with McLaren has tightened up, they're going to need every point they can get. So hopefully, it won't matter too much. And next race, Ocon, well, for Alpine, he'll be able to do better. But I think he might be a little bit disappointed. But starting from the pit lane, yeah, obviously he was limited.
Sebasti says shocker in qualifying for Ocon, which is true, out in Q1, wasn't he? And Greg says, and I wholeheartedly agree with this, the only thing spectacular about Ocon's race was the Spider-Man helmet.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And
don't forget, we've got to look forward to next year as well, because, Alonso's going, so Ocon's going to want to be a team leader, whether or not, he's going to have to take that by force. Whether or not he can do that will be interesting to see.
Ocon v Gasly is going to be very, very interesting. I'm really looking forward to that one. I don't want to do this. Seb Vettel. I'm just going to let everyone cry for a minute. Look, it doesn't matter what you think of Sebastian Vettel. I think he's got a lot of love out there, but my God, what a race. He was leading. I mean, he made up 5 places at the start, is the first point. Then through the pit stops, safety cars and all of that, he then leads, which I think takes him over 3,500 laps led in Formula One, which is absolutely mad. It's all looking great. I don't think he would have got a podium. I think the likes of Leclerc, Perez and co would have been too quick. But I think he was on for probably at worst 6th place. He might have been able to get Russell for P5. I don't know how things would have worked out. We'll never know. But ends up P8. Massively big cock up in the pits. I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted. Front left, sticky front left, wouldn't go on. They managed to get it on after rejacking the car up 16.8 second stop, and his race was absolutely undone. And I'm gutted for him, Stuart. Because I feel like that had the potential to be possibly his best result of the season. I feel like it would have been. What's his best result so far this year? Actually, that's a very good question, Sean. His best result is 6th. I think he could have at least matched that, but it could have been his high point before he ends his career. But hey, he led a couple of laps, I guess, so that's something. But yeah, it happens, doesn't it? I'm not going to read the language I've written in my notes. One word begins with T. I'm so mad.
You know what? Yes, it was tragic that he lost so much time in the pits and he could have had a result that was better than that. However, I think I'm still delighted with his race in general. The pace was good. He got to lead laps. He fought with, Mercedes is as well as the high end of the midfield. He had a great qualifying. He had some great battles getting back up to 8th place after the pit stop thing. This was for anyone who doubted who Sebastian Vettel is this weekend, put it all to bed. He's had a shocking year in general. Things have not gone well for him. He's had struggles. We know that. There was a period in the middle of the season where he was going out of Q1 regularly and that sort of classic scream of frustration over the radio. And I'm honestly, despite the bad luck in the pit stop, I am delighted that it looks like this last third or quarter of the season, whatever, the last part of his Formula One career, he's going to have a fighting chance at having some just decent results, some good racing, being up in the midfield, just having a good time. He was ecstatic after this race. He celebrated it like a win. So I think it's still a drive worth celebrating, no matter what the actual sort of result was.
Yeah, that's fair. You calm me down, Stuart. You have this way of doing it. I suppose 2 really great moves. I think the move on Albon, I know fresher tyres before anyone says it, but the move around the outside of Albon at turn, what is it, like that fast multiple apex right-hander on the run to 19,
oh
sort
my
of
God,
16,
yeah.
17, 8 was a fantastic move. And then that battle with K-Mag on the final lap, you know, I'm not going to moan about them seeing Verstappen over the line, because I moaned after Japan that they didn't see him over the line very excitedly, but I really want to see that final lap from start to finish from Sebastian Vettel. I'm sure they'll share it on the socials, will F1. But what a fight with K-Mag. Lovely. So, I mean, I need to see the replays. I feel like he may have been beyond the white line on the exit of turn 19, but if we all just shh and don't say anything. I might be wrong. If you've seen a replay, let me know of the off-board, but it looked nip and tuck. I might be way off, but I'm just so pleased that he got past K-Mag. Nothing against K-Mag, but it kind of, P8 is some great damage limitation. There might have been an element of driving angry if Sebastian Vettel still gets angry. I don't know. He likes to shout out on radio sometimes when he's frustrated, but that's a good comeback. And actually, 3 points now off Alfa Romeo in, what would that be, for P6 in the standings? So 52 points for Alfa Romeo, 49 for Aston Martin. I feel as well like, I can look at the results to tell you that is the case. Although Alfa Romeo, I think, in terms of pace, were having a strong weekend until this race, and Bottas' spin, the momentum definitely feels like it's with Aston Martin. I think they're going to get that 6th place now. They've got a great shot at that, and they would have done it today had Seb finished a couple of places higher without that pit stop. But yeah, I think that's fair what you're saying. It's a good drive from Seb either way. I just think we just all want a little bit more, don't we, really?
I think if you told mid-season Aston Martin, who I think were 9th, that they'd be in with a fight for 6th with 3 races to go, they would be delighted. They would snatch that out of your hands. So yeah, I'm really happy for where they are right now. And I mean, the second half of the season has been fascinating in general, like teams making strides and pulling performance out that you thought that you wouldn't see from them this year. So yeah, I'd love to see more of this, particularly from Vettel in the last 3 races.
Yeah. Lance Stroll. Oh, bloody hell, Seb. No, still annoyed. It's not worked. Lance Stroll up to P3 by the end of lap 1 because of all sorts going on ahead of him. Fantastic qualifying yesterday from Lance Stroll, by the way, from somebody who I've openly said on this channel many times is not a great qualifier, particularly, even though he's got a pole position to his name. Great qualifying yesterday. Was doing so well. I think it's been, aside from what happened in the race in the end, I think up to that point it had been his strongest weekend this season, unless I'm missing an obvious one. But I guess really the question, I know we've talked about the accidents, we're not going to write too much, but that jink to the left, Alonso said it was a late move. Looking at it back, it feels like a late move. But is it much later than we normally see? It's quite early down the straight as well, isn't it? That move to the left. I don't know if maybe, I think he is under investigation, so whether Lance might take some pain for that, maybe a 3-place grid drop for the next race. Do you think that'd be fair?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? It was a late move and a little bit sudden. Especially when you're going so fast, you kind of need to have a little bit of responsibility. And I don't know how much of that was a move and how much of that was a look, because it was very bumpy. I was watching his onboard and I wonder if it jolted a little bit more. I'm trying to give him a lot better for the doubt. Like it wasn't a outrageous,
no,
like, shift across the whole tractor thing, cutting Alonso off completely. I think it was a bit of a move. Surprised Alonso. Maybe Alonso was further up than he thought. And yeah, that went about as bad as it could have got, to be honest. Although I was very glad that they brushed the barrier, but I'm glad that neither of them just went flying into the barrier. They that was a much later down. Once they sort of decelerated a bit, they sort of brushed against it. And no, Stroll was spinning across the whole track, and I'm glad cars didn't, because this was just after a safety car as well. Yeah. So there were everyone was bunched together. No one hit him. So in terms of the way it could have gone, it kind of went as maybe as well as it could have gone, really. But yeah, if you're going to blame at someone, you're going to point it at Stroll. But I think it wasn't horrendous. It could have been worse.
Oh yeah, I'm not. I know you don't think I am, but I'm not saying he swung the car to the left in the most aggressive. It just a little bit late, that move. But we've seen later people get away with it. So I think maybe the outcome, because the crash was so big, makes you think maybe it should be. But if that happens and it's a flick of a front wing that catches him or nothing really comes of it, you don't tend to see anything, do you? So it depends what the FIA decide. If they are taking into account the outcome this weekend or whether they're not this weekend, we'll see, won't we? Sorry if I sound really pessimistic about the FIA, but I don't think many people are, forget everything that's happening off track at the minute. Cost cap, I just mean generally with penalty decisions are just so inconsistent. But anyway, let's not get back into that. I guess most important thing, you've said it, Stuart, everyone okay, could have been much worse. Somebody could have easily T-boned him, couldn't they, coming down that straight with all that smoke, and it could have been much worse. Obviously, not much worse for poor Lance Stroll because he's out of the race. But I think overall, up to that point, great weekend from Lance. And we'll see if the Stuart, I don't know if he is still under investigation. We'll see if stewards decide anything in a moment. Just super quick before we move on. Please do leave a like. We're trying to get to 500 for Charles Edward Cheese, as always. We're on 195, 872 watching. Thank you. Actually, I'll tell you what, in chat, let me know where you're watching from. How many of you are watching from somewhere in Europe and how many are over in the US or Australia or wherever. Just let me know where you watch from in chat. Please do drop a like to get that to 500 for Charles Edward Cheese. Always appreciate it. Yes. Late crew, leave a like. That's it, Stuart. I like that. I suspect, I don't know. I'm just intrigued where people watching from because obviously most of my audience is USA, which surprised me when I was looking the other day at my analytics as I prepare for next season, and a winter, as I'm sure other content creators will allude to, of stressing over every single thing in analytics. But anyway, where did we get to? Where should we go? So we've done Aston Martin. So Haas, Kevin Magnussen, P9. Good to see them back in the points, Stuart, isn't it? Is my big takeaway from Haas today. Kevin Magnussen, slow stop as well, 5.1 seconds under the safety car. So I think the stop under the safety car, maybe that 5.1 pushes it back to being closer to a normal pit stop time. So maybe not a huge amount lost. But really, the big surprise for K-Mag was doing that on a one-stopper. Nobody thought a one-stopper was happening today. And K-Mag did it. Huge credit, I guess is what I'm saying.
And got, points out of it. It wasn't like a complete no hope strategy. Very impressive from him. There was a moment, I think it was again after once the first safety car period had stopped, when there was suddenly like a bunch of people who were a bunch of these midfield teams who were suddenly like in or near the points. The Haases were there, the Alfa Tauris were there, the Aston Martins were there, and it was like suddenly you've got like 6 incredibly hungry cars and only a few positions where they could get points. And K-Mag was up there as well. And I was, not as you can see from the actual results, good and bad luck happened to people, but it was, K-Mag weathered the storm and made it work. Pirelli didn't see that one coming.
Let's look at his strategy here. Pitted on lap 18 to put the mediums on. Let's be honest. That battle with Seb, you could see what we saw of it. He had no grip, did he? He had nothing left in those tyres at all.
Yeah.
But still to get him that far is impressive. I know a couple of safety car. I mean, one safety car extra, I suppose, helps him out there. But that's pretty mega. It's been a while since I've said mega on the stream. So there you go. Mick Schumacher. Disappointing 15th place, not necessarily with him though. Did get to pit under the safety car, was run wide by Stroll at turn 1 on the pit exit, no penalty was given there. It was noted, but no penalty. I think he was messed up in the pits as well. I think I saw somebody say with a slow pit stop in the chat earlier. I don't know if that's confirmed. I'll have a look in the press releases shortly, but I thought Mick was on for points today. He looked really racy, was right up there battling, and it just kind of all fell apart for one reason or another. And I feel maybe he's just not going to have to look and cling on to that seat, because what he needed this weekend was points, and it's just not working for him. I do feel for him. I do.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure at which point it all kind of went a bit wrong. I know he got that penalty as well at the end, but he is fighting for that seat, and I haven't quite seen him, grab it with both hands yet, which is a shame. And I think there's a lot of potential in him, and he's having one of those years where it's not. It's a shame Magnussen came in and kind of like basically showed him up, to be honest, because he was against Nikita last year, and it seemed like he was clearly the stronger of the two. But now, I don't know. But we could see. I might give him another chance, but I know there's a long queue of people willing to take that seat, young and old.
Young and old. I forgot to mention actually on K-Mag, by the way, no further action on alleged breach of Article 2.5.5b, which is speeding under yellow flags. Or overtaking under yellow flags, actually, apparently. Overtook Mick Schumacher and Esteban Ocon at turn 11 and turn 12 under yellows. Gave the positions back, noted that was a result of cars in front having slowed unexpectedly to avoid debris on track. So they're investigating that. That's okay. I know they've got to, I suppose, for yellow flags, but cars braking on track for debris and then K-Mag shooting past and giving the places straight back, then that's, I don't know. But no penalty. That's what I'm saying.
Fair enough. They've been thorough.
Have a look at chat, see if anyone said anything about Schumacher as to where it might have fallen apart towards the end. Did Mick Schumacher get penalties?
He got a 5-second one for track limits, I think.
Oh, he did, didn't he? Yeah, leaving the track without a justifiable reason 4 times, 5-second time penalty. So 5 seconds to his time would have been P14, so it doesn't put him anywhere near the points or anything. So that's why he dropped back at the very end. I missed that one on the decision system, but there you go.
There was a lot going on on the last lap.
And quite a few black and white flags as well for track limits. If anyone's got anything on Mick Schumacher, I'll just quickly check Twitter. Because I think we're both quite curious, aren't we, Stuart, as to where it started to go wrong, because it was looking. I've just typed Twitter into the Twitter search bar like an absolute moron.
Incredible.
So it's imploding now because it was looking really good for him. So that's a shame, really. But nothing in it at the moment. Well, I'll keep an eye on chat and we can come back to it if anything is said. So where are we up to? So we've done Haas. Alpha Tauri, a point for Yuki Tsunoda today. I've got literally nothing in my notes for him, so I'll just say great stuff from Yuki today to get a point from P19. Good stuff from him. Actually, only 5 seconds off K-Mag in the end, so not absolutely horrendous. Good stuff from him. Gasly, I've got loads for. I say loads for. Did very well, as did others, to avoid Stroll down that back straight. I know we've kind of touched on it, but the onboard of him is quite dramatic, is the word I'm going to go for, and he's done well to avoid that, as a lot of people did. So it's not so much the debris, it's the Stroll coming back across the track, isn't it?
Yeah, it was tricky. It's being like first or early on the scene like that's tricky, and he couldn't. The tire smoke was obscuring where cars were, and then when you slow down, you got to like. There's a fear, isn't there, that people behind you won't be prepared to slow down, and you get hit from the back. So I'm sure a rush of adrenaline to the heart for Gasly, but yeah, did well, carried on. That was probably not crashing into that might have been a bit of a highlight from Gasly's race because it went a bit sour from then on.
It did indeed. 5-second penalty for not staying within 10 car lengths of the safety car. Fascinating that they managed to make that decision in the race so quickly, given that things like that have previously taken a couple of hours after a Grand Prix. But anyway, unfortunately for Pierre Gasly, he came in. Sorry, he came in to serve his penalty. Didn't serve it correctly. The stewards reviewed the video evidence and determined that car 10, that's Gasly, came into the pit lane and stopped. The front wheels were lifted at 4.54 seconds and rear wheels at 4.8 seconds. This is a breach of the regulations. However, not significant enough to warrant disqualification, as this was a team error. No driver penalty points are allocated, but he did get a 10-second time penalty, which drops him to P14, which would have been 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He'd been knocking on the doors of a top 10 with Tsunoda. He might have pinched that 10th place off Tsunoda if they were battling late on, but it's a penalty for Pierre Gasly, 10-second time penalty. So there you go, really.
Makes sense.
Yeah, Gasly's done nothing wrong now. That's a bit of a team error, but 5 margins in F1, 4.54 and 4.8 seconds. Goodness me. I'm not saying it shouldn't be a penalty. It should be because he's not served it. But yeah, that's how fine the margins are. But yeah, kind of fell apart from there, didn't it? For, as you say, Stuart, for Pierre Gasly, because he was racing quite well. He was in that fight, wasn't he, with Norris, and Tsunoda was in there as well, and looked like he was on for some pretty hefty points, actually, at one stage. So, bit of a shame that it's not worked out. And I did have a question for you, actually, on Pierre Gasly. Have you noticed that since it was announced he was leaving, he's got a lot more snippy on the team radio?
I haven't, but I'll keep my eye open for that. Interesting.
I know he had his problems with his brakes in qualifying, and he had the same in Japan. And I know that's frustrating and probably quite scary when your brakes aren't doing what they want to do. But I feel like he just seems a bit more short with the team. Whether he's now not afraid of the repercussions from Helmut Marko if he gets like that, I don't know. But yeah, quite a. I don't know. It's just something I picked up on. Maybe I'm misreading it. Maybe he's always been like that, and we're just hearing it now. I don't know, but a shame.
I mean, if he's worried about Red Bull for being snippy on the radio, that hasn't affected Yuki Tsunoda at all, has it?
Thank you to Lyle. Says, here in the US in a state called Maine, good stream. Thank you very much, mate, for your super chat. And thank you for your nice comment. And Elijah again, thank you very much. Says, thoughts on track limits this weekend with penalties in qualifying and the race. I know Crawford said the system is working better now, that it's the white line. Much love. Thank you very much, mate. I'll try and remember to come back to that one as well shortly. We'll get through the field first, but I appreciate your super chats tonight. Yeah, Basil says he noticed it in Japan, but is that just Sky making drama? Sky don't do the world feed. I know what you mean, the world feed, maybe. I don't know. The FIA has clearly retaliated against Mr. Gasly, says Scott. Septimus says definitely noticed. So I'm glad that a few people have noticed. It's not a criticism. I like hearing a bit of passion over the radio from drivers, to be honest, because what's the word I'm looking for? They can get a little bit too PR, can't they, with their answers? So it's nice to hear them go, oh, bother, every now and again, or whatever the equivalent is. Alex Albon, bother. Any driver that comes on the radio says, oh, bother now is my favourite driver, and that's it.
I got a very quick question.
Go on, then.
Did Martin Brundle call him Pete Gasly at one point?
I didn't catch it if he did.
Okay, well, maybe chat will have noticed that. But yeah, I heard him say that. I thought, that's weird.
But randomly on the... And I said it to you in DMs earlier, randomly on people's behaviour changing, I feel like Martin Brundle has just doubled down on grumpy old man recently. I really feel like he's got right grumpy. I know maybe some people say he's always been like that, but this last few races I really feel like he's not had enough, but he's just not bothered anymore, and he's just going to say it. And I quite like that. But anyway, Alex Albon, I think really good weekend for Alex Albon. P12 today, did get a black and white flag for track limits at one stage. Seemed to make an early pit stop around lap 10, I think it was. So I thought that was early at the time, which is in my notes, but a lot of people weren't that far behind him, to be fair. But I think that's a good weekend for Alex. And 2.1 off Ocon, who was 1.9 off a point, so he's not that far off point scoring. It felt like... How can I word this in a way that doesn't make it sound boring? It felt like an Alex Albon weekend, something we've come to see in 2022, where he's on the fringes of points at times, good in qualifying, and he could just do with a couple more cars dropping out, or a safety car falling a bit better for him, or something like that, and then he's picking up a point. But overall, really good from him. And Nicholas Latifi, span at turn 6 on lap 5. That massively compromised his race. Had to pit for some new tyres. Got a 5-second penalty for forcing another driver off the track, which was Mick Schumacher. He was locking up as well. Pretty disappointing from Nicholas Latifi, to be honest. But I think there's only been about 3 races this season where I've not said something similar to that. But 12th place for Albon, not bad for Williams.
I feel like, as you said with Albon, it's like, this is a real Alex Albon race we just saw. And I say, yeah, this is a real Nicholas Latifi race we just saw. It's very, very typical of both of them. He's not bowing out with grace, is he, old Latifi? But yeah, I agree. Good to see. A good race from Alex Albon. Kind of, we know where Williams are, and they know kind of what their goals and expectations are. And I think he had a good weekend.
Nicholas Latifi says, car was better than I was expecting it to be today. That's not to say it wasn't still tricky to drive. Made a mistake at the beginning of the race with the spin, getting caught out with the balance in the high-speed corners. Didn't manage to do any Didn't manage to do any high fuel running beforehand, so was exploring as I was going along. Hang on, Oh, so he was using the race as a test session, I saw. Like practice to Nicholas Latifi at races now, apparently. That's a joke. Don't worry, Latifi fans. I'll say it again. Lovely guy, but I'm going to give him grief. Someone's got to get it. Tricky start with a flat spot into turn 1, says Alex Albon, nursing the fronts for the first 10 laps with huge vibration, so we had to pit early, but then we were offset. It was a shame, but I don't think we had the pace for points today. So there you go. A couple of retirements and they're there, aren't they? So that's all they need, really. That's all they're asking for. Come on, you selfish lot at the front, drop out. And that leaves us with Alfa Romeo, I believe. Zhou Guanyu P13. What did they call him?
Oh my!
In the announcement.
Oh shit! I can't remember it, but my goodness me, they didn't even try, or they did try and they tried too hard.
It was like it was sort of like a. I was going to say there was an attempt, but there wasn't, was there, at all? I mean, first of all...
like Zhou Guanyu or something.
I'm trying to find it now. I'm just trying to find it, because it was... Somebody will put it in chat before I get there now. But it was funny, and I can let them off. However, it's less annoying than Paul di Resta calling him Zoo. I don't know why that one winds me up so much. It's like, please. I'll have a listen to it in a minute because I've got it up, so I can't play it because I'm going to get struck with copyright. But yes, anyway, to the point. My notes for Zhou include nothing, and nothing, which is bad because he's finished the race. He's P13 ahead of Gasly, Schumacher, Ricciardo and Latifi. Yeah. Nothing on Zhou apart from the funny name pronunciation from the announcer. And Bottas pitted lap 11 to try and undercut Gasly, Norris. Slow pit stop at the release at least. Didn't work on Gasly, but did work on Norris. But then he ended up spinning at turn 19 and beached it in the gravel after he lost the back end. And that was game over for Valtteri Bottas. The biggest disappointment for me this weekend, Stuart, is that prior to that race, Alfa Romeo looked like they were on for big points, and it was the first time for a while that I feel like they were on for some proper big points, and they've come away with absolutely sod all. So I'm a little bit frustrated and disappointed for them.
Yeah, I think they will be as well. I think they're going to be, in terms of races they got away. It's a big blow for them, especially when they're double checking 3 points ahead of Aston Martin. They could have opened that gap out just a little bit this weekend or got something from it. Yeah, a little bit tragic there. 3 races still to go. I mean, I'm glad it's still exciting. Who knew this is how tight it would be between Alfa Romeo and Aston Martin? Beginning of the season, Alfa Romeo were so strong and Aston Martin was so weak. And now they've sort of come towards each other and who knew? Yeah, not much else you can say about Alfa Romeo, really. Just disappointing. Not entirely through their own fault.
No, I have the pronunciation for you. They went with Zhou Guanyu, Gran Gran, Zhou Guanyu, Zhu, yeah.
Incredible.
Like I say, there was
all they had to do was replay any session from the last however many 40 races we've had this year, but they chose not to. Incredible.
They'd have been closer if they'd said Joe, as in Joe Blogs. They could have just gone Joe. They'd have been much closer to that one. But then I feel like a Brit criticising somebody else's pronunciation is a bit of a piss take. So I'm going to shut up, especially with all those years I was calling Kvyat, much to people's disgust in my comment section. But there you go. So I think that's everybody, Stuart. I've tried to get through it quicker, so I might have lost track. If I've forgotten anybody or anything, let me know in the chat and we'll come to you shortly. But driver of the day, Sebastian Vettel took the official driver of the day. Who are you going for, chat? One surname, let me know. I will read a few out and then we'll do some Q&A. Stuart, who are you going for? I've got my list of 3 as usual.
Yeah, I got a list. I got a list of 4.
Steady.
Although one of them I'm like, all right. Well, I'll drop Perez out. I can't remember why I wrote that down in the first place, although he had a good race. I'm like, so my 3 are Hamilton, Vettel, Alonso, which feels like a classic, a classic 3-way scrap you used to get back in the old days.
What is this, 2007?
I know, right? What
Not
a
really,
time to be
because
alive.
Vettel wasn't challenging for podiums in 2007. Sure, wake up. 2012 maybe.
Yeah, 2012, 2010. That's the kind of podium you'd be used to seeing. Yeah, Hamilton, great race. Starting to be able to punch above his weight, almost got the win, was, having a nice classic battle with Verstappen. Vettel, of course. I mean, I think, honestly, it's probably between Vettel and Alonso. Vettel for just absolutely incredible drive and a heroic comeback, and Alonso for his flying through the air and then still battling through to 7th. I think I'm going to give it to Vettel just because I like him more. And I was so rooting for him. So yeah, I'm going to give it to Vettel. And I liked, and I really enjoyed the overtakes and the scraps he had in his fight back. So yeah, and it could have been but it could have been a few places above had he not been badly pit stop. Vettel it is.
So my 3 were Hamilton, Alonso, and Vettel, and then underneath I've written Leclerc ? Just because he's come from 12th to P3, but I got a load of grief when I gave it to Russell last year, taking advantage of a safety car. Oh, I can't give Russell driver of the day. He only got there because of a safety car, but no, it was this year. Sorry, but so I won't pick him again. But I think if you've gone Vettel, I feel like Hamilton would be a good shout, but
yeah.
Alonso was flying at one stage in that race. He was literally airborne, dragged his car back for repairs, and still finished P7, which feels like that should be one of the drives of the season, as stupid as that might sound, potentially with a little bit of recency bias in there. Do you know, it's been so long since I've given it. I want to give it to Hamilton. It's been so long since I've given Lewis Hamilton driver of the day. In fact, I don't think he's had one this season. Alonso's definitely had at least one. So we'll go with Hamilton, but I think driver of the day, Hamilton. Drive of the day, Alonso. Recovery of the day, Alonso. Maybe something like that one. Greg says Shaq in his car on the way to the podium. That was a bit of cheese on toast, and there's nothing wrong with cheese on toast. I love it when things get a bit cheesy. Elijah says Alonso. Carlos Sainz, turn 1 says sighted canvas. Carlos turn 1 sight. Sorry, I read that wrong. I'm just going to read some names. Basil, David, they both say Alonso. Will says Seb, Alonso, and Charles. Jackson says Alonso. Nick's gone with Alonso. Michael says Max. Yeah, that's fair, isn't it, Max? He didn't make the mistake in the pit stop, did he? And still drove really well to get back to take the win. Yep. So I think that's a fair shout. Magnussen making that one stop work for Red Raven. If you love a strategy, I guess absolutely. It's a couple of points as well. When was the last time Magnussen was in the points? You're going to say last weekend, don't you? No. First point since Austria for Magnussen. Wow. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I'm liking that, Red Raven. I'll read your comment later, by the way, mate. Thank you for leaving that for me. James says Hamilton. I think I've read that one. Professor Hitch says Alonso's car. Septimus says Vettel. K-Mag, Alonso, and Seb says Will. He's corrected his one. Unknown Racer says Vettel. Richie says Vettel. Perez for Mario. Alonso for SKN. Everett says Vettel. Danny Rick says Elijah. He was there. Why not? Sainz for Alex as well. Fernando, absolutely wild drive, says Zach. Arlen says Alonso as well. Pascal says Joe, Alonso, Vettel. Vettel for me, says Sonny. How Alonso finished the race baffles me. I think it baffles everybody. It's the fact that he went airborne, landed, and I think hit the wall, and then was just like, oh, well, I'll just carry on. Alonso Crashgate, says Michael. Love it. So I'll get back into that one. The fact Alonso even continued is a miracle. Red Raven says Mazepin of the day, Latifi, which is fair enough. Jamie says Lewis Hamilton. Who haven't I've read a few of these already because I did them in a weird order because I'm odd. James says Alonso and Vettel. Built 2JZ Lexus says Hamilton, third fastest car. And Alison says Alonso. Rowan says Norris. Yeah. He had a good drive. Yeah, why not? Lando drove the wheels off the thing. He did. There we go then. There's your drivers of the day. Official one was Vettel. Looking at the top, I mean, obviously, Russell had the incident with Sainz, so that for me rules him out straight away. Perez, the contact with Bottas, I suppose you could knock that one off as well. But actually, if you look at Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Norris, Alonso, Vettel, Magnussen, even Tsunoda, they all had very good races, didn't they? Ocon coming from the pit lane to finish 11th. So we've had some really good drives today. So I just enjoyed the race generally. Thank you very much to Scott for your super chat. Says, why does Formula One continue to pick the worst people to wave the checkered flag? Tim Cook today looked like he was surrendering a war. Thank you very much. I missed that, Scott. I'll have to go watch that on the replay. Thank you for your super chat. Massively appreciated. And Alex as well. Thank you very much. It says, big up TV coverage, cutting to last lap battle. I'll be honest, Alex. I was sat here, I was going, please, let us just watch those last couple of corners of Vettel versus Magnussen. We needed that one. That was... quite a moment, wasn't it? Quite surprising.
Do you want... There's no further information. Do you want a quick bit of breaking news? Haas protesting the result of the race against Alonso and Perez for them not getting black and orange flags for their damage. So there you go. But that's it. That's the entirety of the information.
Okay. I'm trying to stay off Twitter for obvious reasons, but I need to go and have a look. I will mute the 2 words I need to avoid before I do anything else on stream. But that's an interesting one.
There, it's technical infringements is the key word. So Haas seems to believe they should have been black and orange flag for driving around with broken cars. We'll see what comes out of that. Well, we all love a race result not being known until hours later.
I get it. I get their frustration. I said earlier, didn't I? think the Magnussens were quite harsh at times. And we've both questioned in this stream, why should there have been a black and orange flag for Alonso? Why wasn't the one for Perez? But I suspect that's going to be, in far more professional terms, probably the FIA go, oh, never mind. And then I can't see them throwing Alonso and Perez out of the race because of a flappy mirror and a bit of front wing. Was it Perez, did you say?
Yeah. And we were talking at the beginning of the stream about how, particularly Perez didn't get penalised because it had already broken off and so wasn't really a danger anymore. So I think this will be interesting because we'll get to have an official FIA, stance on this. So we'll know what will cause a black and orange flag to be flown and what won't, I guess.
Yeah, Perez's one flew off quickly, didn't it? It was gone very quickly. So, by the time they'd got the flag ready, it would have been too late. I know they don't literally always throw a flag, but you know what I mean? Well, like you say, maybe if nothing else, we'll get some clarification on their decision-making on that one, which could be interesting, I guess. Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe.
JB Weiss says, stop acting like that was okay. I didn't say it was, but okay. I was just saying the bit fell off. What are they supposed to do? You can't tell someone to come and fix an end plate if the end plate's already gone. The front wing, as soon as the end plate flies off, the front wing's not dangerous anymore. So you can't give them a dangerous car flag or whatever the official term is for it if the car isn't dangerous anymore. The FIA were too slow on that one. I'll end the poll. Cancel the poll. I'll end the poll. Thank you very much to everyone who voted. 57% said that was a great race, a good race. 35%, average 4%, bad 1% from 1.2k votes. Thank you very much. John T, evening mate. It says Perez, is it just still evening? It says Perez's wing broke off on lap 7. I'll go back and watch that then. I thought it had gone quite quickly. I don't know if you know, John T, when was Alonso's mirror flapping? Because that definitely felt like it was going for a few laps. So maybe we're wrong on that one with the quick thing. So apologies if we missed that, but a lot going on in that race. Because I suppose, not to defend us, but I suppose the point I'd make is that Sky said it was flapping and then about a lap later it flew off, didn't they? They were quite late with their call on it. I don't know, but unless I'm thinking, was it Russell they were quite late on? It's late, leave me alone. Be interested to know how long it was going on the Alonso car as well. So I'd be surprised if there's a penalty for that or if there's any kind of kickoff. But I will make the point that I completely understand Haas's frustration, given I think some of those calls on Magnussen were harsh. So if I was Gunther Steiner, I would be going to the FIA saying, hang on a minute, you do this to us. Why? I completely understand why they've done it. Is what I'm saying. I'd probably do the same. Yeah.
It's an interesting protest because the teams will only do. They're not going to bring a driver in until they got the black and orange flag, unless they actually need to, because the car's, underperforming or whatever. So, are they kind of protesting the stewards for not giving them the flag?
I suppose they are, aren't
they? It's going to be a weird one.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. If nothing else, like you say, we get some clarification. Any questions in chat? Because we're not going to go too much longer because it's just about to hit midnight here in the UK, and I've got some
Stroll's
water
got
here.
A three-place grid drop.
If I get, I said that was coming, didn't I? I absolutely said that was coming. Yeah. I was going to say if I eat or get wet after midnight, then God help you all. I've just waited. There's nothing on there. I'll wait for the FIA system to update with the official thing. So. 3-place grid drop, and apparently a 5-second penalty for Albon. Neil's
yeah, that also came through for leaving the track.
So we should. Oh yeah, that's just come through now. Actually, I will have a quick look. So Stuart's review video evidence have concluded that's consistent with other decisions this year. Based on instructions of the race director, there was a breach of the regulations. Yeah. Car 23 left the track at turn 12 and rejoined, but retained its position. 5-second penalty imposed after the race. There's not actually any explanation in there as to who it was with.
Don't need it, mate. Who needs all the information?
Unless it was just leaving the track. But it doesn't...
Yeah, it could easily have been.
No, it's just gaining an advantage. Maybe that is just the black and white. It's the same one as Mick Schumacher got, leaving track and gaining advantage. Maybe it is just the black and white flag and one more rule there. So there you go. Max Clader says, how should we look back at Nicholas Latifi's time in F1 quickly? Because there's not an awful lot. Hungary last year, was it? Superb drive. And I think he scored some points recently, didn't he? As well. Japan, 9th place. So there we go. That was Nicholas Latifi's F1 career in a nutshell. I used the old TV burp jingle for that. I'm not singing. I promise I won't. Never enough games says 5-second penalty for Max. I haven't got that here. Here we go. Drop of 3 grid positions and 2 penalty points for a total of 5 for the 12-month period for Lance Stroll. Stewart's heard from the driver of car 18, that is Lance Stroll, and the driver of car 14, that's Fernando Alonso. Reviewed evidence, blah, 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 blah. It was clear to us that the driver of car 18 made a late move in reaction to the overtaking attempt by the driver of car 14 by moving to the left. The stewards determined that the driver of car 18 was predominantly to blame. That's it. Stewards tonight have just decided, I'm going to tell you the penalty, quick paragraph, and that's it. No more. So there we go. Yes. That is a throwback match.
We've got bedtimes to get to. They're being kind.
Absolutely. I'll keep an eye out on chat for any more questions. But I feel like I need to say something on Dietrich Mateschitz. I cannot say his name, and I'm so sorry. I'm terrible with the pronunciation. But sad news for Formula One, and obviously Red Bull massively. And we've heard a lot of tributes and things, so I'm not going to necessarily go into that. But I do want to say that I didn't really think about it till today, but he leaves behind one phenomenal legacy. When you think about it, he bought Jaguar for apparently $1 back in day. He bought Jaguar, turned it into Red Bull Racing, then went and bought Minardi, turned it into Toro Rosso, and has given us drivers like Sebastian Vettel, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Daniel Ricciardo, drivers that have gone off and done things elsewhere, like Jean-Eric Vergne and Sebastian Buemi, drivers that have gone off and won championships in F1 and all over the world. And you think, that's quite a legacy, isn't it? Would be my tribute to him. Just that is just... I saw somebody say on Twitter, and a lot of people disagree with this, but I saw on Twitter earlier, somebody was saying something along the lines of, long term, he may well be remembered in a similar way to the likes of Colin Chapman, for example, for the impact he had on Formula One. He's not designed any cars, but for the impact he's had on F1 and what he's done. And it just got me listing all these drivers that he's brought through. And when you look at the field, I mean, you've got Verstappen, Red Bull Junior, Carlos Sainz, Red Bull Junior, Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, Alex Albon, Nick de Vries now, of course, going to AlphaTauri. I mean, that's amazing. amazing how many drivers have come through. I've never really, it's stupid, but I've never really thought about it before. Do you know what I mean? Just how many drivers have come through Red Bull?
Yeah, and are still in the program. He's certainly done. I mean, he's had a big impact through the sport. And this is stuff I don't know, but about other sports as well, apparently. Got 2 teams under his belt, which may have just gone under. I don't know if Ford would have just let Jaguar die if he hadn't
done, yeah.
If it hadn't been sold on, how long Minardi would have lasted. His impact is very far reaching, and that much is very true.
Absolutely, yeah, and not just F1, is it either? The things he's done and saved teams, and somebody pointed out there about financing after the tobacco sponsorship ban. We're not just talking about Red Bull Racing, but Red Bull, Sauber, Petronas or Petronas. The Red Bull logo was all over that car, wasn't it? Just quite amazing. So I'm not going to go into a big soppy tribute because they've had them across the weekend and all day today. But it's just amazing the impact he's going to leave on Formula One. And it just surprised me. I hadn't really picked up on just how many drivers we've seen, and of course not just great drivers, but some of the greatest drivers we've ever seen, including Christian Klein, Jaime Alguersuari. These are some of the greatest drivers ever to grace Formula One. Scott Speed. So yeah, I guess.
What a legacy.
That's the word I'm after, legacy. What a legacy. But also, since I've mentioned Scott Speed as well, very quickly, great news for Logan Sargent this weekend. Provided he gets his super license, he's going to be in F1 next year alongside Alex Albon. So fantastic news for him. And I think that he's probably going to get his super license, but Williams are doing everything they can. He got some more points this weekend, didn't he, for doing 100 kilometres. They're going to get him 2 more FP1 sessions and the young driver test. And if he keeps his license clean, he gets 2 more points for that as well. So probably going to get it. But now we just wait and see what Haas decide to do with that second seat, which for the record and for the millionth time, if the decision is Hülkenberg or Schumacher, I'm taking Schumacher. That's and
we've chatted about this before, but yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that's the better overall bet.
Tonio Liuzzi, Robert Dornbos. Sorry, yeah, I like Hülkenberg. Nothing against the guy, and he is quick, but yeah, he's had chances. Let's see what you say very quick. We'll do a few relatively quick fire questions. Yeah, please do leave a like. 285, 717 watching. Let's try and get that as close to 500 as we can for Charles Edward Cheese. That'd be massively appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe as well, because of course preview for Mexico on Thursday, and we'll be back live similar time to this next week, going slightly delirious. Totally not F1 related. Just had a little notification on my phone from BBC News. Apparently Boris Johnson won't be running for Prime Minister. Oh no. Anyway, does anyone else think that Haas should just... Why did that have to come up? I think that Haas should just sell the team to Mario so that we can have an actual good US F1 team, says Basil. I wonder if Andretti will... It'd be Michael Andretti, wouldn't it, that comes in, but it would be nice to see Andretti come in. Not necessarily at the expense of Haas. I prefer a new team rather than buying another team out. Was he part of the Red Bull Air Rave as well? Says Cited Canvas. I don't know, to be honest. Air Race. I know they said on Sky that he liked his plane, so I'd imagine he was part. I quite like the Red Bull Air Race. I was watching drone racing again the other day. That's an experience. That's quite exciting. Where do you think Lewis would have finished if he was on the mediums like Max? Says Law. P2? Do you think he would have still been P2, Stuart, if he'd gone mediums instead of hards, or could there have been enough in those tyres to fend him off a bit more? They're a step softer, aren't they? So they should be quicker.
I don't think any... He didn't seem to enjoy the hards that much. I'm just very sceptical that anything would have held Max back, to be honest. But we can't but speculate, can we? I still think he would have been second.
Yeah. It's one of those ifs, isn't it, that we're going to all wonder about. Do you think he can win a race this season, Lewis? We're running out of time, aren't we? Mexico with the altitude might be a bit more of a leveler. Red Bull might not have the pace in a straight line if it is their power unit that's doing that. That could help Mercedes a bit, maybe. He loves Brazil. that wouldn't be a bad shout.
And Brazil is weird and wet, and
Yeah.
you've got the sprint, and you just never know. You just don't know.
Sprint.
I think there's opportunity for like weirdness to just tilt things in a different direction.
Did Max's car also have the wheel brow come loose at the end? I didn't see that, Mario, honestly.
I did.
Oh, Stuart did. There you go.
When he was fighting, I think when he was fighting with Lewis, when he moved out of his slipstream to overtake him, the wheel brow on the left hand side kind of flipped right, almost like it was opening, like a jaw, briefly, and then kind of went back again. It was a bit weird. It didn't fly off, but it did sort of flap about a bit, as a lot of things on Red Bull cars tend to do.
It's quite a bumpy track, isn't it? Even though they tried to fix that, it's still a very bumpy track, so maybe just bits falling off. I mean, on the Alonso mirror, it's because he flew. I'm going to say it again. No, that was sarcasm, Space. I am not at all. I won't read your message, but I will say that I am not in the slightest. Pascal says, thank you very much for your super chat. Says Dietrich did, I would say Dietrich rather than the surname because I can't do it. Did very well and was a great man. He was a co-owner of Sauber and sponsored the team from 1995 to 2005. The rest is history. Danke Dietrich. Thank you very much, Pascal, for your super chat. I appreciate that one. And Pythagoras185 said, thoughts on the cost cap breach. Have you heard about this, Stuart?
News to me.
Hardly mentioned. So I said, whenever it was announced, probably on this very stream, the US Grand Prix reaction of 2019, was it, or something like that, when we had the cost cap announcement, that I said it was going to be very difficult to police. Because if somebody breaches it, what are you going to do? I didn't envisage at the time that we'd have to wait nearly 12 months for a decision to be made, or what feels like 12 months. I feel like that's a little bit ridiculous and needs to be tightened up quite significantly. I mean, I have to stick to my guns. A rule breach is a rule breach. If you've broken the rules, you should face a penalty. We've seen penalties coming through today for on-track things that are, some might say, are not really that big of a deal, but you know, a rule is a rule. You break it, you've got to pay the penalty. The problem is, what is the penalty going to be? I'm not going to spend hours talking about it because ultimately, I think people are sick to death of it and just want this deciding. But what do you do, Stuart? Where do you go with it? I mean, a fine, you're putting a price on breaking the rules, and teams like Mercedes will say, oh, well, if it's only $30 million, then we'll just add that into our finance for the season, and we'll spend the extra 4.9% and just leave a little bit in case we go over the 5%. So you can't just fine them. The CFD and wind tunnel thing sounds like, rumours are saying that there is an agreement. Some are saying there isn't, but maybe there'll be a CFD wind tunnel deduction for next year. But then next year's car's already being developed, so that's not going to impact them until 2024, maybe, unless I'm missing something. I'm sure you correct me in a minute if I am, but it's a very difficult decision, and it feels like a big moment. I think that's why it's been spoken about enough, because the thing is, if they get this wrong, might as well ditch it. No point having it. I mean, the reason for the cost cap makes sense to me. I understand they want to make the sport more sustainable financially. I know they want to make sure that the grid's more competitive, but to me, the best way to keep the field tight or to close the field up is to go with the CFD wind tunnel thing. I think that's a great system that could really work well. But if they truly want to close the field up and that's why they're doing it, then just leave the regulations alone. And then we'll see 2021, because law of diminishing returns for the teams at the top, the rest of the pack are going to catch them. You know, look at 2020 and 2021, particularly last year, was a great season. The field was relatively close. You had the great battle at the front, and that's because the regulations were left alone. Changing them every 5 or 6 years, you're always going to get this field spread. So, I don't know. I reckon it'll be a fine and some CFD time will be taken off them, but it's a really big call, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll try and be quite quick, because you could make an entire.
I know.
You could make an entire stream on this alone. And I think you covered most of it. And I think the main issues are how you police it in a satisfying way. And I think the problem is the huge delay between the infringement and it coming out. The it being sort of audited and worked out, and whether or not there's been a penalty or not, because we're talking about things that happened last year, and whether it's fair or not. If you were to penalize people, if you were to, let's talk about it. We know it's Red Bull at the moment. If it was deemed that you would have to penalize Red Bull in terms of points or whatever in 2021, that's still extremely unsatisfying, because it's almost a year has gone by since that season ended, and you're kind of done with it, and you don't want to have that hanging. The same way you don't want to be hanging around after a race for hours waiting for a steward's decision. This is even worse than that, and having that sort of taken away, it's it's unsatisfying, even if it's fair. So there's that half of it, and then but if you don't do that, and then you penalize people for seasons going forward, even if it's with a significant chunk of wind tunnel time taken out or something going forward that will significantly affect performance, then teams can make that calculation. They'd be like, okay, well, you know what, we're going to overspend this year, we're going to get this title in the bag, it's not going to be taken away from us, we'll just take the hit later on, because a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush that may possibly be down the road. So it's incredibly tricky, and there's not a really, as I say, satisfying way to kind of deal with it. And I think if they took points away from Red Bull last year and championships change hands and stuff, I think that's going to be incredibly unsatisfying for a lot of people. And if they just monetarily penalize them or give them an abstract cut on their development time, I think that's going to be unsatisfying people as well. As I understand it, I don't know how significant an amount they've gone over it is. I haven't really got a firm handle on that, and I don't think that's really been confirmed. There's a lot of rumors about it, and obviously people like Toto Wolff are going to say, whatever the number is, that's point changing. That could be a new front wing or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to pin down. So yeah, I think as you said, we've seen immediately how messy and this all is, and it's not great. I don't like that we're having to deal with it. I don't like that it's come to this. I just wish it hadn't happened. Like, I'm all for the cost cap, but I wish people had just not breached it, to be honest, because breaching it is a pain for everybody.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, Christian Horner said a couple of 100,000, didn't he, over the weekend? Then I've seen some saying $1.8 million, others saying $7 point something million. I think the answer is that nobody knows apart from the FIA and Red Bull. So don't always believe what you're reading online. To anybody in chat that's maybe saying, oh, they've spent £3 billion more than they should. We'll find out. I mean, where are you? Endre says, we don't know. Rules have been broken, just that the FIA thinks so. So how can I word this? What am I trying to think? So I get, yeah, basically what you've said is bang on. The FIA have reached a conclusion that they believe Red Bull have breached a cost cap, and Red Bull say they haven't. There's lots of reasons behind it. And there you go. What can you say? We'll wait. All I can say is we'll wait and see what happens. I'm not going to go on about for hours, because you could quite easily.
It's a weird one, isn't it? Because you've got, whatever they do, it's got to be a deterrent. Otherwise, the whole financial regulations are a bit of a joke. And then there's people have made this comparison a lot. Like, what is the difference between going even $100,000 over the budget, and your wing being 2 millimeters too long or whatever it is that will get you disqualified? It's that, you know what I mean? It's like you said, a rule is a rule, and how do we deal with this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll get stick for this, but I'm just thoroughly bored of it, to be honest. I'm a grumpy old man like Martin Brundle about it. In fact, I'll end this point. I'm going to end it with this controversial point, and I know it'll be controversial. I don't think we should have a cost cap anyway. I don't think it's going to do what they want it to do, and I don't believe, tinfoil hat on, that everybody's innocent of not doing some I guess what I'm going to say is that there'll be other teams out there that have done some clever accounting and have got away with things. I'm not accusing anybody of anything specifically, but you can easily do some clever accounting in Formula One, but you can easily get it wrong as well. So I like the CFD wind tunnel thing. I really like that. Scaling that for championship position, I think that works or has the potential to work. I think having some static regulations will give them this closed-up field that they want. I don't think the cost cap will do that because your rich teams are always going to spend every penny of it and potentially more, and then your teams who haven't got the money are not going to spend it. So, but then as Jos, to be fair, look at the other point, Jos Capito did say in a press conference, didn't he, that it means that they're spending, I don't know what he said, but 20 million more rather than 10 times more. So maybe that's the way to look at it. I don't know. Do you think we need the cost cap, Stuart? Am I being controversial, or am I just being miserable old man and Formula One's not what it used to be?
I don't have a fully firm stance on this, but I was increasingly aware of how runaway spending was getting and the potential for it to become untenable for a few, if not a lot of teams. And it was, finance was becoming a big thing for the smallest teams. And I don't think we want to live in a world where the big teams just buy the smaller teams. So they have a senior team and a junior team. I'm not entirely sure we want to live in that world yet. I think we still want to be able to have a world where people could come into the sport and make a success of themselves, be it an Andretti or a Haas or whoever. So it is a tricky one. And I think the cost cap maybe isn't the best way of doing it. And I agree with you that the wind tunnel stuff is a really effective way. And to be honest, I don't have a solution to fix all these problems, and I'm not entirely sure what the best way of doing it is. And I think whichever way we go with it, we are going to hit things like this that show its flaws that we're going to have to deal with. And the FIA, I think, are going to have to rewrite some of the rules to either make them clearer or more effective or something around this. I think there's no easy way through this period, and hopefully we'll get to a period where this is just how F1 is now and how it has been for a few years, and we've got used to it and it's functioning. We've written the rules in a effective way, however it ends up being. But I think this is going to be a tricky teething period at the very least.
Yeah, I get the whole, we need to be careful about the smaller teams, but at the same time that they're only going to spend what they can afford to spend. And it is only the first year, so maybe things will change in future years. But the top three last year were Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari. The top three this year are Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes. The bottom team last year were Williams, and the bottom team this year is Williams. So do you know what I mean? So Williams, if they've got $100 million budget, they're only going to spend $100 million. And yes, Red Bull might go and spend $500 million, but even if Red Bull only spend $145 million, they're still well clear of Williams on the grid. So I don't want the sport to die and be at risk, so maybe the cost cap is a good thing for that. But I'm not convinced it's really the thing we need, or maybe it needs to be adjusted. I don't know. I saw it in chat a moment ago, somebody saying, what's the point in the cost cap, though, if we're not going to allow new teams in? Because that's a whole other argument, isn't it? The FIA is saying we don't need new teams, and F1 are saying the same, and it's like, think of a few drivers who might disagree, who aren't going to be on the grid next year, who could do with a new team. It's all... This is based on, I will say this opinion is really based on one season. Let's see where we're at in 5 years' time. If I'm still doing this on these live streams, come back in 5 years and we'll say, actually, do you know what? I was wrong, or yeah, let's get rid of it. But all I would say, really, to finish off on this is that I hope they can get this process down a little bit in terms of time. Christ, I know these things take time and they can't be easy and they're massively complicated. I mean, look, Red Bull have got Red Bull powertrains, Red Bull technologies. It's not going to be easy, is it? But I feel like it's gone on too long now and this should have been quicker. But hopefully we'll hear something. I know they've suspended talks out of respect this weekend. And they're talking midweek. I think those talks are going to continue, so we'll see. I'll read a couple of your comments out because I kind of went on the cost cap and then we're going to wrap up because it's getting on now here in the UK. So the purpose of the cost cap is not to ensure that all teams comply, but rather to minimise the extent of disparity, says Space. No cap is dangerous for F1. No new teams. Teams wouldn't be able to catch the mega spenders, says Greg. I'm not going to answer your points, by the way. I think I've covered it, but I want to give everyone a chance, or some people a chance to have their say. Cited canvas, if they're going to have a cost cap and a team breaches it, and then the amount must be spread among the smaller teams that can't breach it. Interesting. Formula 2 Tom says, here comes Sebastian Vettel. Thank you very much. Random Bosman said it's already the big three as it is. Pascal says, at the end of the day, if you breach the rules, you should be punished. Simple, really. The other teams did not breach the cost cap. Scott agrees with me. Thank you very much, Scott. I thought I was alone, but maybe not. Totally agree. No limit, says Clansome. And again, Red Raven says, again, if the penalty carries over for multiple years, that's a calculation that would not be so easy as overspend 1 year and worry about it later once we have the title in our hands. I think we'll leave it there. Just in a very quick answer, Stuart, are you expecting fine and or wind tunnel CFD deduction? You're not expecting, I don't think anybody is really expecting points deductions or anything like that?
Yeah, that seems to be the strong consensus among people. And when people start saying the same thing, I think that's what tends to be what happens.
Alex says Haas's protest is deemed admissible. Red Bull and Alpine summoned. Yes, they are indeed. Well, I'll leave it there because they're just going to be telling us they've been summoned. So keep an eye on Twitter for any of that, see if anything happens. But we'll wrap it up there because we've got a little bit longer than I wanted to tonight, actually. Under 2 hours, though, which is good. Thank you very much, Stuart. I know you're going to fly off, so great to talk to you again. And then I'm sure we'll do it again next week, aren't we? So hopefully we'll have a cracking end to the Grand Prix like we did this week. And I'm going to say it now. I'd quite like a Checo win next weekend on home soil in Mexico. Look at how it was when he just got a podium. Imagine the win.
I missed the end question of that. But I missed. I heard the beginning where you were like Checo.
Yeah,
for
Checo for the win.
Which I'm fully behind. Let's give him something to celebrate, especially in that lovely stadium section. Yeah,
that'd be great.
But yes, late crew, meet back here next week for Mexican.
Food.
Reaction.
We're having fajitas.
Let's hope Sky handle it a bit more grace than Bake Off did.
No, that's a conversation. We'll do that next week for that Mexican week. That wasn't Mexican week. Thank you very much, Stuart. And if I don't talk to you before, I'll talk to you again next Sunday.
Night.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye. Thank you to Stuart. Thank you to you guys as well for tuning in, as always. Pleasure. Sorry we got onto cost cap there and it went on a little bit, but difficult to kind of sum that up in a few words. It is late, so I'm going to go off to bed. I will see you next week. Obviously, the preview will be out on Thursday, as always, for Mexico. Only 3 more previews left, which means only 3 more tie talk times. And of course, there are only 3 tyre compounds across a race. We just go to bed, Sean. Social media links in the description, as always. Thank you for all your super chats. I think I got them all. So thank you very much. And don't forget to try and get the stream to 500 likes. Please do drop a like before you disappear. Probably not do it live, but hopefully we'll do it once the stream is finished and up as a VOD, which will be very, very shortly. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.